Last week on Round Sailing, we built the side decks and got them in place. Now I have most of the deck on the boat and it feels amazing.
So this week we're doing something quite interesting. We're going to weigh the whole boat to see where we're at this point in time in the build, weight-wise, and how we are on the weight budget. How much more weight we can add to the hull before it's too much. And also to get an estimate on where we're at with the center of gravity. And of course, that's not the end center of gravity, because we'll add more weight in different parts of the boat. Maybe a lot more weight in the stern, where we'll have an engine and the water tanks at the middle. So of course that will change. But it's nice to get the feel for where we're at right now. And that will make it easier to plan ahead if we need to change anything, maybe move where we're going to have the water tanks or the batteries or anything like that, if we're very off at the moment. And I have made a calculation where I think we should be, or a rough estimate on where I think we are on the weight. And somewhere between 3,800 kilos to 4,500. Because it's not easy to calculate all of this, because we have added a lot of stuff, and I have all the numbers, but then how far off we are in reality, that's quite hard to estimate. But somewhere in between there, I think, is the reality. But it could be more. It also could be less. So it will be really interesting to see where we're at in reality right now. So let's make it a competition. Like I said, my estimate is somewhere 3,900 to 4,500 kilos, somewhere around there. But I can put down a number and I will say 4,350 kilos. That's the number I'm putting down. So why don't you do the same down in the comments? Write a comment on what you think. And of course, you can't cheat and watch the end of the video first. You have to do it now. And then we'll see who's the closest. So this is the type of scale that I'm going to use. It's like a mushroom load cell with a rubber puck here on the top. And it's calibrated for kilos now. And it's pretty accurate, 0.1%. And it can take up to 5 tons. And I have 2 of these setups, including 2 displays. So we're going to do the weighing in 2 steps. First, we're going to weigh the front part of the boat at that hull cradle that we have up there. So one of these load cells, one on either side. So we get an estimate also how the weight is from port to starboard. And once we have that number, we're going to move aft and weigh the stern of the boat, also at that cradle that we have here in the stern. So we're going to use 4 of these jacks, 2 on each side, and then we'll put the load cell in between them. Yeah, as always, when lifting something big and heavy like this, there's a little bit of stress involved. Not that I'm too concerned this time, because I don't have to lift the boat very high. I just need to raise it maybe 15 millimeters or so that I can get the load cells underneath here, and then I have to lower it again so that all the weight comes down on the load cell. So I'll go back and forth from port to starboard to lift the hull as even as possible so that nothing shifts suddenly. And the same thing when I'm letting it down on these load cells. And then I will keep the jacks just a few millimeters under the box if something should shift suddenly. Not that I think that's very likely. These boxes are quite stable, and it's nice to have that they have the same shape as the hull here. So I'm just making a couple of markings here on the hull. If the box would slide slightly to the side, because right now it sits at the correct position. I have measured from the shear line down to the box on both sides. So I know that right now I have the same measurements. So the bow is up, and we have the result. On the port side, we have 821 kilos, and on the starboard side, right now 1817. It was 1818, so it's drifting a little bit. So more or less the same number on both sides. It's within the accuracy of the scales. So in total, 1,640 kilos or thereabout. And that's pretty close to what my calculations, because I think the stern should be a lot heavier than the bow, since we have a bigger surface area of the hull in the stern. Even if we have the stem up here, which is quite heavy from oak, but it's maybe 100, 120 kilos. But I think the stern will be somewhere 2.4, 2.5 maybe, but we'll see once we have it up. For some reason it feels safer back here because of the wider base, but I don't know if that's the case in reality. The stern is now up and resting on the load cells. We have a reading on both of them. I'll wait with the numbers just a bit because they're a bit off. And I think that's because the floor is not even here. We have a lot more load on this cell compared to the one on the starboard side. There is slightly more structure inside the hull on this side, but not to make up this type of difference that we have. It's around 280 kilos of difference. So I'm going to check the floor to see that, because if the hull is not pressing down equally on those two load cells and it's like slightly tilted, more weight will go to the lower side. So I'm going to check it with the laser and see if I can lift the hull again and just even out the height of the two load cells so that we can set down the hull more evenly and see if that will correct the reading. The numbers are quite surprising, actually. Okay, so it was like I suspected. The floor is not even, or the load cells are not lifting the hull evenly right now. It's slightly tilted. The port side needs to come up 15 millimeters. It doesn't sound a lot, and it's only something like that. So hopefully lifting that side slightly will fix this problem. I don't think that the weight will be even on both sides because there is slightly more structure on the port side, but I'm guessing maybe 40 to 50 kilos more. But right now the difference is 280 kilos more on the port side because that side is lower and that's way too much. And yeah, this was the problem. So we'll see if this will fix it. Okay, after a lot of lifting, moving and measuring and taking the boat down and up, it's finally in level from side to side here. And on the starboard side, it's 996 kilos. And on the port side, it's slightly more at 1,028 kilos. So that brings in the total weight of the stern to 2,024 kilos. And that's actually quite a lot lighter than I thought it would be. And if you haven't calculated it already, the total number, the whole weight of the boat came in at 3,662 kilos. That's a lot lighter than I thought it would be. My initial rough estimate where I, just estimated how much the cedar in the hull weighed, how many strips, the square meter that we have in the hull, together with how many layers of glass, how much saturation in percentage we have of that glass with epoxy, how much fairing, how many screws, everything. I just went through the whole boat, just made a rough estimate of all the steps. And the number I came up with after doing that was 3,864 kilos. And the actual weight actually came out 200 kilos below that. And my guess at 4,350 kilos was way off, 688 kilos heavier than the real weight of the boat. So quite interesting, and a really nice surprise that we were this light at this stage in the build. This means that we don't have to stress that much about the weight moving forward. Of course, we need to check this every now and then throughout the build now, so that we stay on the line, so to say. And like I said before, the design displacement of this boat is 16,500 kilos, but that's fully loaded because this boat is designed from the start with all of our gear added to it. It's a long distance boat, so we added all the gear that we wanted to have. Lots of anchor chain, big windlass, big winches, you know, all the things that we could think about that we wanted to have, all the spares, all the tools, all of that is in that number and that we calculated.
It was time for our open house, and while we were working our butts off tidying up in the barn and on the farm, Vera made her delicious chocolate toffee cookies together with her grandmother. Around 100 patrons came to Sunhill Farm to see the boat and where we live. We had people coming from the US, the UK, Australia, Greenland, Germany, the Netherlands, Norway, Finland, Denmark, and of course Sweden. It was so much fun to meet everyone, and just amazing that so many people came to visit us.
Now that we know the weight of the stern at the center line of the cradle box back here, and the same for the bow, we can calculate where we have the lengthwise center of gravity on the hull as it sits today. And we can do that with the distance that we have in between those lifting points. And I have plugged those numbers into a formula, and we have 2,024 kilos back here in the stern and 1,638 kilos for the bow, and the distance in between those points of 7,000 millimeters. And that gives us a center of gravity lengthwise that sits 3,131 millimeters in front of the center line of this box here. And I have marked that down on the hull, and that's this point here. And the center of gravity, lengthwise in this case, is really the point where you could lift the whole hull up on and place it on a giant finger like this and get it balanced. So maybe it's not that important at this stage in the build to know the exact lengthwise center of gravity, but it will become more important when we're getting closer to completing the hull. Because once the boat is in the water, the center of buoyancy, the design center of buoyancy, and the center of gravity, those 2 points should line up vertically for the boat to sit correctly trimmed fore and aft, and of course also from side to side on the waterline that it's designed for. If it's off, the boat will trim forward or back, and that's why it's important to keep track of that now throughout the build, so that we add weight in the correct places within the boat. And by marking that out now, the center of gravity, we can keep track and maybe weigh the boat every now and then we can see we're starting to get too heavy maybe in the stern. Then we maybe have to move some heavy stuff further forward in the boat, or vice versa. So that's why it's good to already now start these measurements to keep track, so that we don't deviate too far also from the total displacement of the boat, but also how the center of gravity moves fore and aft. And I also have the measurements for the lengthwise center of buoyancy and the center of flotation. And I will mark those out, and then we can compare how it looks right now at this stage, and see how off we are from getting the boat to float on the correctly trimmed. So here you can see the three different lines: the longitudinal center of flotation, the longitudinal center of buoyancy, and the longitudinal center of gravity as the boat sits today. And as you can see, the center of gravity line is a bit forward of the center of buoyancy line. And that's because we're missing a lot of weight behind this line right now. There's no engine in the boat, there's no batteries, no equipment. So moving forward in the build, we would like to see this line getting closer and eventually lining up with this center of buoyancy line once we have the keel installed and all the equipment. Those two lines should be lining up vertically. But let's have a look inside the boat as well and see how these lines are in relation to the interior of the boat, which also is a bit interesting. So here you have these lines inside of the boat: the center of gravity, center of buoyancy, and center of flotation, all in the lengthwise direction. And I'm no naval architect, but from the way I understand it is that the center of flotation is really a representation of the center point of a 2D plane at the waterline. And that's really the pivot point from where the boat will, when it's rocking back and forth like this in the lengthwise direction, when it's not heeled over, so slightly aft of the center of buoyancy. And once the boat is finished and we hopefully have moved the center of gravity line back to line up with the center of buoyancy line, we'll have a 3D point in space somewhere around here, which is the center of gravity. And that will be more or less the point with less movement on the boat. Of course, that point will move around if the boat is heeled over. And that's really nice to have that in the galley. So it will make it a lot easier to cook here, low down, and as little movement as possible. And the two aft cabins are also pretty close to that point, and especially Vera's cabin, where you can sleep at the center line, really down low, will be really comfortable when you're sailing in high winds. And maybe you're seasick or something. That will be a really good place to rest. So like I said, I'm no naval architect, but I find these data points and numbers really interesting to learn more about and how they affect the character of the boat. So maybe we can dig in a bit more to that in a future episode. But this is it for this week, and I hope you enjoyed the episode, even if it was a bit technical and nerdy maybe. And as always, thanks a lot for watching, and if you're interested in supporting our videos, there's always a link to our Patreon page in the description of the video. Hope to see you back here next Friday. Take care, bye bye.